fair play to anybody in the UK that got up for that one. Well done, pat yourself on the back. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're in the US, if you're in Australia, anywhere else around the world, I get it. It's about time we have an awkward time in one. Welcome to the race review for the 2019 Japanese Grand Prix. Did we enjoy that one? I certainly did, don't get me wrong, but I've seen mixed opinions online. Of course, later on we'll talk about driver of the day, overtake of the day and our race rating, but just as a base level Grand Prix, okay, in 2019 we've had some real A-star races, but I think that one was pretty strong. A little bit of everything, lap 1 incidents, good strategy, I think a fairly strong fight at the front and the midfield fight, plenty of overtakes. Suzuka, for me, and I've said this for a very long time, isn't a circuit I expect to see a lot of overtaking for. But as you can see in the race result, it was quite an interesting Grand Prix, and race results still pending, kind of. Penalties have been awarded already to the likes of Charles Leclerc. A decision has been made on the Perez-Gasly incident. However, Racing Point have launched a fully fleshed out appeal against Renault. Potentially, that could leave the door open for a double disqualification for the two Renault drivers, meaning a double points finish for Racing Point and potentially a double points finish for Toro Rosso Honda. Well, at Honda's home Grand Prix. So that could be an interesting one and definitely one to keep an eye out for. But let's stop wasting time. The race result. Valtteri Bottas, I was going to say just a strong race. A really strong race, I think was fair to say. Probably one of his best races in the second half of 2019. I'm happy for him in the sense of I really hope this Valtteri 2.0 that we saw at the beginning of the season, that we've seen flashes of in this second half of the year, I really hope this result today can really push him forward and help not only finish off this year, but also next year and really make him believe in himself, have that little bit of fire that I think sometimes missing from Valtteri. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a moment. Sebastian Vettel, P2. Controversy, never far away from Sebastian Vettel. Jump start? Potentially. Don't worry, we'll get into that a little bit more. Lewis Hamilton, I think disgruntled with P3, I think is probably fair to say. However, the man behind him, Alex Albon, P4, a career best result for him. And I believe it's the best ever result for a Thai driver. However, depending on your source for that information, depends on whether that's true or not. But a career best result for Alex Albon matches Pierre Gasly's best career result. So that's quite interesting for you. 10 points for Carlos Sainz. It's for McLaren in P5. Really strong drive again from the Chile master. I think we're all getting a little bit bored now of saying strong drive. It's just becoming the norm, but he's been that good this year. And another fun fact, Carlos Sainz by himself has more points than Renault. Yeah, there's a good one for you. Charles Leclerc would have been P6 but is demoted to P7 after 15 seconds worth of penalties. That promotes Daniel Ricciardo into P6. Don't forget he was out in Q1, so a mega drive from the Aussie. Pierre Gasly P8 with Sergio Perez in P9, and the final point at the moment, barring any disqualifications from now on, is Nico Hülkenberg. Outside the top 10, Lance Stroll. I think what we've seen from Lance, although this weekend he did out-qualify Perez for the second time in 2019, I think he's proved again that in race conditions, he knows what he's doing. It's just in the qualifying sessions he still doesn't quite have the grips with. But I think Stroll this year, and I was thinking this the other day, I definitely think he's matured a little bit this year. We're not seeing as many mistakes from him. He's been strong in the races, and I think definitely improvements have been made. 12th place, Danny Kvyat, a relatively quiet race from the Russian driver. Also had a pretty disappointing qualifying, so P12 I think he'll be okay with. Lando Norris, he will be disappointed. I think, and of course we're going to talk about this in a moment, race stewarding today was a little bit lenient in my opinion, and the incident with Alex Albon is definitely a talking point of this Grand Prix. Norris stopped 3 times in the end, so an unlucky P13 you could say for him. Kimi Raikkonen 14th, Romain Grosjean 15th, Giovinazzi 16th, and Kevin Magnussen P17, the 2 Haas cars and the 2 Alfa Romeo cars. I hate to say it, as a Haas fan, and I'm sorry to other Haas fans and Alfa Romeo fans, I think they all had a bit of a snooze fest today. Tried something really bold, a long strategy going onto the hardest compound tyres, all of them stopping relatively close to each other. I think Grosjean was the first to stop lap 16, Magnussen was the last to stop on lap 19 of those 4 guys, and we didn't really see anything of them, and sadly, this isn't the first time we've said this in 2019, we didn't see much of the Williams cars either. Supposedly, George Russell didn't finish. However, there was a mistake. This is so hard to explain, ladies and gents, so apologies, but a mistake with the timing. So, although the checkered flag wasn't officially waved until lap 53, apparently there was a little bit of a glitch in the system behind closed doors, and on the timing beams, the checkered flag was waved a lap early. So all the results were taken from lap 52. So Sergio Perez, despite crashing out, actually, according to the official results, he didn't crash out. And he remains in the top 10. So hopefully that clears it up. There's no plans on trying to change the result. They're just sticking with lap 52, which, if you're a Sergio Perez fan, I'm sure you're absolutely buzzing about. But it's a strange one. It's not the first time we've said that in 2019. And our only non-finisher after a lap 1 incident was Max Verstappen, not having the best second half to 2019. And to be honest with you, I have to sympathise with him. And I have to sympathise with all the Orange Army. Belgium didn't go his way, lap 1 incident. Monza, another lap 1 incident. However, he was able to keep going in Monza and eventually got an okay result, a good haul of points. Today, a lap 1 incident, and we might as well start there actually. I think this week, just on another tangent, we'll go through from bottom to top. We'll go from bottom to top. So we'll start with Verstappen. That makes sense. So Verstappen, this is the big incident, or one of the big incidents of the Grand Prix. Lap 1. This has actually resulted in a 5-second penalty in the end, which is a penalty I agree with. Max Verstappen on the outside of the end of turn 1, we will call it. Charles Leclerc on the inside. The 2 Ferraris had a pretty poor start, both of them. Sebastian Vettel, we'll talk about in a moment, had a little bit of a jump start, a little bit of a judder, got away with it. I'm not too sure about that, but Leclerc also, whether he was put off by Vettel, whether he just didn't get a brilliant start, whatever, it wasn't going great for him at the end of the first corner. Understeers into the side of Max Verstappen. Verstappen onto the gravel. I think he destroyed a good chunk of his front wing, and also the side pod wasn't able to continue. And I think a disappointing day, not only for Verstappen and for Red Bull, but for Honda. Obviously, Verstappen is their talisman, if you want to say, in 2019. And as the weekend was building up, I think most of us were expecting a big result from Red Bull. So a disappointing day from everyone involved with Honda. And Max Verstappen, I believe, with Alex Albon's brilliant result again today, is continued to be outscored by Alex Albon since Albon has joined Red Bull. So, yeah, fortunes I think Verstappen would love to turn around, and Leclerc now is edging that gap out a little bit more in front of him. But Mexico next time, I imagine things will turn around. Robert Kubica and George Russell, not a lot to say. However, this weekend, obviously, if you missed it, where were you? Typhoon Hagibis, qualifying and the race are on the same day. And I will say, maybe this is coming from a Formula E fan perspective, I didn't dislike having the 2 on the same day. 2 o'clock in the morning, not a fan of that. However, I understand for some places in the world, that's just the norm for Formula 1. So if I only get it once, I shouldn't complain. So feel free to have a go at me for that. But I didn't dislike it. And I've said before, and I know some people just would love Formula 1 to stay the same, I have nothing wrong with any of the current weekend layout, the qualifying layout, but if they want to give something a try, even if it's just for one weekend, I'm not going to kick up too much of a fuss. But quali, the big stories, I mean, George Russell, I might as well say, a really quiet weekend, comfortably quicker than Robert Kubica. Williams supposedly had a new front wing, but decided to not use it on either car. Robert Kubica made a mistake in quali out of the final corner, may have caught a bit of tailwind at the back of his car, just slightly onto the grass, into the wall. And I think all of us that were up at 2 o'clock in the morning groaned a little bit that only minutes into the session we had a red flag. However, Robert was okay. Williams, awesome job to get that car fixed. Cracking, hats off to the boys and girls at that team. I did not expect to see Kubica line up on the grid, but he did. Wasn't quick. Whether that was down to the car, whether that was down to, well, that lack of practice is always a factor that's going to come into this weekend. Not too sure, but Kubica very angry, very frustrated in interviews. So I'm not too sure if something's gone on with that front wing, or I don't quite know what's gone on behind closed doors, but they hoped potentially this could be a better weekend for them. And while it wasn't the worst weekend they've had all year, wasn't great either. P17, Kevin Magnussen, another driver to make a mistake in quali. Another driver caught out by the wind, crashed in the exact same place of Kevin Magnussen. And Crofty, please don't say Romain Grosjean's in the wall, because that upsets me. But, you know, finding out then it was Kevin Magnussen put a slight smile on my face. But Haas, my boys, disappointing weekend. I might as well cover Grosjean, Magnussen, Raikkonen and Giovinazzi. I mentioned it a minute ago. All of them went for a brave strategy. I'm surprised the teams didn't split strategy, but all of them ended up in their own little gaggle at the back of the field. Not quite as far back as the Williams, but in absolute no man's land, I think it's fair to say. But credit to Romain Grosjean for getting into the top 10 again. That's really boosting his confidence, I think. And whilst lap 1 wasn't great for Grosjean, at the end of lap 1, he was behind Kevin Magnussen. What I will say, at least he's keeping his nose clean. And that's something that we've seen in Suzuka before he hasn't been able to do. But as long as he keeps getting consistent results, not necessarily in the points. The Haas team have only had 1 point score since the summer break, and that was Kevin Magnussen last time out in Russia. I think that just having a quiet end to the season will do Grosjean a world of good. And Haas, I think, ready just to write off 2019. P13, Lando Norris. I do feel for Lando in 2019. I feel this is another one of those races that just nothing went his way. That contact with Alex Albon, I mean, a great start from both McLarens. Albon went behind them at the end of lap 1. Even Sainz had a go at Hamilton. That got a little bit close. But Norris was in front of Albon, behind Carlos Sainz. And I think Norris would have accepted if Albon had overtaken him. I really do. Albon, a little bit optimistic at the final chicane, up the inside, a little bit like Senna and Prost all those years ago. Didn't go great. No penalties, actually, which I was a little bit surprised at. A little bit dive bomb-esque from Albon. But the new rules, and I do have to say that they're trying to be consistent. The new rules, hard racing is allowed. And I've got to say, it was hard racing, a little bit too extreme for me. And the fact that Norris had to stop, apparently there's a bit of debris in his brake duct, so they had to come in and clear that. All got a little bit messy for him, but Norris, he'll be gutted to not score points again. The second half of the year for him. Qualifying, and actually I think this has been the story all year for him. Qualifying has been great. The race, things have just not unfolded for him. But even then, good overtakes, did really well to work a 3-stop strategy. That was impressive to get in front of the likes of the 2 Alphas and the 2 Haas cars. But in the end, even if the 2 Renaults do get disqualified, no points for Norris this weekend. Sad face for Lando. In front of Lando Norris, Danny Kvyat, you know what? We didn't see a lot of him. He was in that kind of midfield pack that, to be honest with you, up till Daniel Ricciardo, that the whole stand-ins were kind of involved with. Kvyat, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Perez, Gasly, Ricciardo, all of them getting involved in this fight. Kvyat, though, tried a bit of a different strategy, and for the most part of the Grand Prix, I believe he went a little bit longer than most of the guys. Didn't quite work out, and I wouldn't say disappointing day for Kvyat. Didn't get through into Q3. I think a better way to put it is a weekend to forget. Not his strongest of the season, I think is fair enough to say. But please correct me in the comments if you saw anything from Danny Kvyat, because I think of all the drivers, he was the one I saw least of. So please shout and scream at me in the comments below. P11 Lance Stroll, we had a bit of a deep chat, I was going to say then. We had a bit of a convo about him a minute ago. I think a strong race, a strong weekend actually from Lance. And if he can pick up a point, I think he'll be very happy with that. Again, not too much more to say on that. Nico Hülkenberg, P10. Another points finish. And although it's not the awesome result of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo up in P6, Hülkenberg did the good thing. When the team asked him to move out the way, he did exactly that. And you can't fault him for that. He played the team game beautifully today. And that consistency that I keep banging on about with Hülkenberg on display once again today. Points, that's all Renault need. And whilst it seems McLaren are a little bit out of reach now, a double points finish for Renault on a weekend where at the end of first and second practice, and even qualifying for that matter, they weren't looking great. To pick up points, they will be chuffed with that one. Sergio Perez and Pierre Gasly, the final lap that didn't count, that didn't exist, that vanished. Contact between the two of them. No onboard footage, I believe, has been posted just yet, but it's been given as a racing incident from the off-board shots and from the notes from the FIA and the stewards. Neither of them were particularly gracious in leaving plenty of room. Perez supposedly squeezed Gasly a little bit on the inside, but Gasly chucked his nose in just a little bit too much. So 50 of one, half a dozen of the other, I believe is the saying. 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, I believe is the official saying. I never get that one right. It's been a long weekend, guys. Please leave me alone. But to be honest, Gasly and Perez more so from where he started. Not a bad Grand Prix to get into the points. Gasly started off strong, but in the second half seemed to fade off just a little bit. Charles Leclerc, P7 in the end. 15 seconds worth of penalties, and it all stemmed from that first corner incident with Verstappen. As I mentioned, I think Leclerc was in the wrong. I think it would have been a slam dunk penalty if it was halfway through the Grand Prix. It was lap 1, so it wouldn't have surprised me too much if the steward let it go. They didn't. They've given him a penalty, but they've also given him a 10-second penalty for ignoring the FIA's call to bring him into the pits to change that front wing. He did an extra lap. FIA weren't happy with that. Considering that it was a big chunk of debris that came off and hit Hamilton's car, yes, we have the halo, but very easily that could have been an incident like Felipe Massa back in 2009 Hungary. So I can understand why he's got a penalty. I can understand why Leclerc wanted to stay out. He couldn't see the damage and it didn't feel like there was too much damage, but when the FIA come calling, you've got to come in. Leclerc, though, as much as I can't give him driver of the day, because if you're getting 15 seconds worth of penalties, you can't get driver of the day in my eyes. However, brilliant comeback drive. Awesome. Sebastian Vettel last year got rinsed. Absolutely rinsed for making a move on the inside of Spoon on Max Verstappen. Even Brundle in commentary said last year, you can't make a move there. Charles Leclerc threw that opinion straight in the bin, made an incredible move up the inside of Kimi Raikkonen in 130R. Loved that move, making overtakes into the chicane, into the first corner, and Suzuka is a circuit synonymous for not being able to overtake. Leclerc slapped everyone in the face that had that opinion, including myself, and despite lap 1, I was impressed with his race. So I can't complain too much. He's out of the championship running now. Only the 2 Mercedes drivers can win. He'll be... I always use the word disappointing. I think that's unfair. But I think he will look at today. He'll look at qualifying and how we just missed out on pole position. He'll look at a P7 and think, yeah, there definitely could have been a podium on the cards, at least, I think is fair to say. Daniel Ricciardo. Awesome Grand Prix. Out in Q1. He would have been gutted for that. Really gutted. Although the Renault wasn't looking great, to be out-qualified by his teammate, to be out-qualified by Lance Stroll, yeah, I said it, that can't have been great for Daniel Ricciardo, but went on the alternate strategy, went really long into the Grand Prix, and as I mentioned with Hülkenberg a minute ago, asked the team to move Hülkenberg out the way, and this is what I love about Danny Rick. He asked Hülkenberg to get out of the way, and it took him a couple of laps to Hülkenberg to eventually let him through, but Some drivers you see, once they're through, just sit behind and don't really do anything, don't make any moves. But that's not the Daniel Ricciardo way. That's not the Honey Badger way. Instantly, not even a lap gone, had got past Stroll, moving past Perez, moving past Gasly, comfortably past all of them. Lovely overtakes up the inside of one of them in Spoon. I think it was Kvyat a little bit earlier on in the Grand Prix. That was a cracking overtake. But then, to close in on Leclerc, I mean, Leclerc did have a pit stop, and Ferrari will be kicking themselves now that they did that extra pit stop and didn't get the fastest lap. But Ricciardo just within that window, I think he was 8 seconds behind Leclerc at the flag, so moves up to P6. Very good job from Ricciardo. Definitely in with a shout for driver of the day. Another driver within a shout for driver of the day. The Chile master himself, Carlos Sainz. To be honest with you, not too much to say. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on, had that kind of iffy moment with Lewis Hamilton on lap 1, got overtaken by Alex Albon through the pit stops, and apart from that was comfortably best of the rest in an element of his own with that McLaren. So although you could say it was a boring race for Sainz, a really controlled race in my eyes, and to be ahead of the midfield by that much, I thought was a really cracking job today. I believe he got 3rd overall in the official driver of the day vote, and I don't think that's too bad. Yeah, impressed with Sainz once again. Moving up to P4, a career best drive from Alex Albon, a little bit like Sainz actually. Except the incident with Lando Norris, which we've spoke about already. Apart from that, and I think he was a little bit lucky to get away without a penalty, but if they're going to be consistent from now on, I'll let it slide. But apart from that, just a really strong drive from Albon. Quiet, but this is what we didn't see enough from Gasly. Races where Verstappen wasn't there, Albon is there to pick up the pieces. He's on the pace, wasn't quite there with the leaders. However, he would have been there if Vettel got a penalty, potentially could have got a podium. I was impressed with Alex today. And moving on to the podium, I'm trying to speed up just a little bit because I know time's getting on. Lewis Hamilton, P3. I think he was quite frustrated actually in the end with P3. And I actually personally feel that it could have been a 1-2 for Mercedes today, but their focus was the constructors. They decided to abort their one-stop strategy in favour of a two-stop strategy, so a potential Hamilton win, don't get me wrong, this is quite a hot take what I'm saying here, but I think a potential Hamilton win was sacrificed to help them just securely win the constructors today. Hamilton with the fastest lap as well really helped them out with that one. Sebastian Vettel, well, it started off great for him today. Well, this morning, pole position. I don't think many people expected that one. A front row lookout for Ferrari. However, before lap 1, turn 1, things had gone pretty poorly. Jump start. And in my eyes, Kimi Raikkonen got a penalty for this. A very similar incident. A jump start is a jump start. And for me, it doesn't matter who you are. The letter of the law says he didn't pass the sensor. So he was a little bit further back in his box than he probably was allowed to, or than he could have. That saved him on this occasion. A P2 in the end is actually a really good result for Ferrari. They probably should have won. I feel they had the best car on the day. Tyre degradation wasn't their strong suit, so potentially you could say Mercedes was the better car. It was definitely between those two, but Sebastian Vettel, for me, was lucky to get away without a penalty. And our race winner, Valtteri Bottas. Again, apologies, I'm just speeding up a little bit because I know we've still got quite a few to get through. So feel free to put stuff in the comments and I'll be there talking to you guys. No worries. I'd like to get a bit of sleep after this one. Valtteri Bottas, race winner. First race win since Baku, round 4, all the way back in what must have been April time. What a real change of fortunes today was for him. A real controlled drive. And as I said a little bit earlier on, this is the Valtteri 2.0 that we've seen flashes of in 2019. And I really hope this just fills his belly with a bit of fire with that silly peanut butter porridge he has. Hopefully this just spices it up just a little bit, kicks him on for the rest of the season. I don't think he's going to win the championship, although it's still a possibility, and today's result helps him catch Hamilton a little bit. Still seems unlikely, but a couple of DNFs for Hamilton, and that could all change. My favourite bit This is why I wanted to hurry up, because I love this bit. Driver of the day, team of the day, overtake of the day, and surprise of the day. For driver of the day, it's no real surprise. Daniel Ricciardo is my driver of the day. I thought he was excellent today. But also Bottas and Sainz. Bottas and Sainz had quiet races, but really controlled races. Bottas was the man dominating at the front, and Sainz was the man dominating the midfield. Renault, pending the disqualification, getting a double points finish for them this weekend. That is a huge result. Chuffed for every single member of that team, because it wasn't looking brilliant at the beginning of the weekend. I've banged on about it forever. I'm probably never going to stop Charles Leclerc's move. On the inside of 130R, I've not put on a certain driver there because I believe it was Kimi Raikkonen, but I'm going to have to rewatch it just to be sure. And surprise of the day, Valtteri Bottas. Just the fact that he was able to control this race so comfortably was great to see. And the fact that he made no mistakes but didn't come under pressure at all surprised me a little bit. So good job, Valtteri. You're my surprise of the day. Race rating, I'm going with a solid 7 out of 10. 8's definitely pushing it. I think 6 is a little bit harsh. Middle of the road 7 out of 10, I think's fair enough. And before we go, I think it's probably about time we have a look at the Drivers and Constructors Championships. Lewis Hamilton, no surprise, still leads the Drivers' Championship. He hasn't actually won it just yet. Sorry, Hamilton fans. He can win it next time out in Mexico, but needs Bottas to have a pretty poor weekend. He also needs to have a really good weekend. However, Mexico is probably a circuit that will suit the Ferrari and the Red Bull a little bit more. Carlos Sainz now moves into P6, a brilliant job for McLaren. There's 2 Renaults in the top 10, and Sergio Perez and Lando Norris are just outside the top 10 in P11 and P12. Mercedes are your Constructors' World Champions. 612 points is unbeatable by any team on the grid. Congratulations. And I know some people will be frustrated about this, that it's 6 in a row, but you've got to give it to them. They've been a bit good. And for all the mistakes that have happened with the other teams around them, Red Bull and their partnership with Renault over the last few years, even their lack of power this year with Honda, Ferrari, strategical mistakes, driver mistakes, you've got to hand it to Mercedes. They're a slick operation. They know what they're doing, and they've definitely got 2 of the best drivers on the grid, in my eyes. That's your lot. I'm very tired. Apologies if today felt a little bit different, but then I suppose the entire Japanese 2019 Grand Prix will be remembered for being a little bit different. Thank you very much for watching. If you are new, feel free to subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed, and also I hope to see you in the next one.